Hello everybody, and welcome to this month's contract administration practice group. With that, I do want to hand it over to Douglas and Jim today to get started with today's presentations.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the call. Sorry we took a few minutes extra to get us all tied in there, but I look forward to talking about quality here during the call. Doug?
Welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started since we are a little bit behind schedule.
Let's go to the first slide there, Matthew. See, now I'm not seeing that on my computer as a full screen, but maybe everybody else is. I just have it as a partial screen. But we include a shot here of a sewing room, and I'll explain that when we get through the slides a bit more. But we're talking about Chapter 7 in the practice guide, quality assurance and quality control. And the one message here that I would share is that quality assurance and control is a very simple process. It can be a complex procedure, but it's simple to establish points within your firm where you go through a quality assurance process or a quality control process. It's in your control. And that's sort of the perspective of the conversation today, that this is, as a designer or as a owner or as a contractor, this is something that should be imperative to your practice. And if it's done at the right time in the life of the project, it's painless. So that's sort of our kickoff point. Doug, is there anything you want to add about, in general, what we're going to discuss?
No, Jim, I think we're doing okay. I was trying to get us caught up on time here.
Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide, Matthew. Sorry. That's okay. You go to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little about what is assurance and what is control. Of course, quality refers to the project requirements in the contract documents as project requirements are established in the contract documents. So this is where we start the basis of our measure. What is the quality of the project? And there it is defined. And then I wanted to touch just for a minute on what's the difference between assurance and control. Quality assurance are procedures that are in place for discovering defects or deficiencies or deviations. This can be before the execution of the work or during. In the process of the project. It would include the products such as the submittals, certifications that are required for the project, or other actions assuring proper products and services are put into place. So that's quality assurance. Quality control are procedures in place for evaluating completed activities and elements of the work for overall conformance to the contract documents. So this may include testing and inspections and potentially involves the finding and correcting of unsatisfactory constructions, components that didn't meet up to the standards of the project in accordance with the project contract documents, and the project requirements. So that's a general understanding of what the difference between assurance and control is, and we're going to talk about those separately as we move forward. So Matthew, let's look at the first slide, or the next slide, sorry.
Jim and Matthew, as we're moving forward, Matthew, I was typing. I'll send you a note. The entire slides are not showing up on my screen either, so I don't know if this is a global problem and everybody is in the same boat. and they're not seeing the entire slide or not. Wanted to let Jim, you know that I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, do you guys know, is it getting cut off on the right or the left or anything? It looks to me like that might be an issue just globally for everybody right now.
The right and the bottom.
Yep.
Okay.
Same here.
All right, I'll see if I can do some changes while we continue on with the call.
Okay. So the first item to start with is particularly important in who affects the quality of the project. And as we started talking, each participant has a role in the quality. The architect or engineer endeavors to be sure that the required quality of work is being performed, whether that's in the design phase or in the construction phase or in the owner occupancy phase. And of course their role is to be sure the owner knows of any deviations that are occurring and that there is a correction of those deviations. So obviously Jim Raines did not do a quality assurance on this PowerPoint presentation because whatever's going on with it, it got through my quality assurance program without being caught. And now it is in Matthew's hands for quality control. He is, I didn't do this on purpose, but he's discovered an issue that needs correction, so we'll work on that. But the architect and engineer also are somewhat uniquely involved in start to finish. The understanding of the intent, what the documents were intended to mean, what the specifications were requiring when they were written, and what the expectation is at the end of the project. And also, to the extent of construction administration phase involvement, the participant's ability to actually see the quality can be significantly changed. We've talked a lot in the past about being conspicuously present as a construction administration person, as a project architect on your project, to assure that you're there and seeing the items that need to be reviewed, so that you have that ability to impact the quality at the earliest possible moment if you see something that's a deviation, so that it can be corrected in the most expeditious manner. Of course, the general contractor is involved with quality. They oversee or supervise the work in a measuring, coordinating, and scheduling fashion. So their responsibility is involved in the overseeing of the project. From the manufacturers and suppliers' perspective, they affect the quality as an initial source of materials, and those programs may be going on within the construction community. Often you see on job sites delivery of materials with quality is job one. I don't mean to be picking on a car manufacturer, but that nomenclature travels from the input of raw materials into the manufacturing process, all the way through to delivery and installation on the site. And also the testing agencies are involved with quality as a requirement of compliance through inspections on the project of materials and work in place. So we have a list of folks who are part of the quality team on every job, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but just touches on some of the major players. Doug, is there anything you want to add into the participant perspective?
I would add in to utilize the owner as well as a resource for the AE when we are doing our quality reviews of work out in the field. And what I mean by saying that is oftentimes, especially when you're dealing with large owners, sophisticated owners, colleges, universities, medical facilities, places like that, they have their own maintenance staff. And they are the ones that are going to be running and operating that building once the project's complete and we're not making site visits. They see things I often have found that affect how they're going to operate the building that I don't see. Access to valves and sequences when they have to do this before they do that. And it's the installation, the way the contractor proposing it, going to work for them. So I would suggest that you also use them, because the quality is not just getting the valve installed correctly, it's getting the valve installed correctly so that it can be used and operated and function the way that the owner needs it to function. So don't forget about those maintenance guys. I've said it before during these presentations, that they are a valuable resource and can be a good help to you out in the field. Next slide, Matthew. Hello?
Matthew?
Yep.
Matthew?
Yep.
Sorry. I tell you, there must be goblins in this thing today. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear anybody there.
Did you not hear me, Jim?
No, I was completely disconnected. So I don't know what happened there. You have, we're one slide ahead, Matthew. Could you back up one slide? So let's focus on quality assurance for the next part of our conversation. Before we do that, any questions, Matthew? Any hands up?
I didn't have any questions yet except for the screen resolution, which I'm not sure. Has it gotten any better for everyone? I've tweaked as much as I think I can on this end.
I'm seeing it now.
Okay, great.
It's cut off a little on the right, but just barely. So you can see the words right now.
Okay.
It's good. I wouldn't do any more.
Alrighty, it looks like we might have had a question just pop up. I'm not sure. It says, are there any free templates for 014000?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Alrighty. So Joseph, it looks like you have stumped the speakers. I don't know of any either at this point that are free templates for it. At this point, as far as I know, most of the templates or guide specs for those areas would most likely be something that is part of the purchased product, either from RCOM or from BSD, or I'm trying to think of who the other big one is. I think SpecLink was actually bought out by I think SpecLink was actually bought out by RCOM as well. I think those three main ones that are the guide specs, I think those are all part of the paid package as opposed to free. There may be some by doing a Google search that are people have posted theirs, but again, those may also not be as thorough or up to date as the ones that you'd get from any of the three main suppliers of guide specs.
Any others?
Let's see here. There's another question box that came up here. And it says that Joseph did notice that there is partial availability at the wbdg.org under browsing the catalog. So I'll try to copy that link out of here that Joseph has sent, and if I can, I'll send that off to people in the group. However, the GoToWebinar system is not usually friendly with copying and pasting of text. So if I can find that, I'll get it to people. If not, I may add that link to the archive of this website recording when it is done. So thanks for that, Joseph. And with that, Jim, back to you.
Okay. Well, as you said, quality assurance ensures a common understanding of the contract documents, and if in the practice guide you wanted to see an explanation of quality assurance, that starts on page 136. And I've captured just a few of the items of explanation there without trying to copy the whole list. But, I don't know what that is. I'm getting a lot of feedback or something. But so quality assurance is like verifying site conditions. Before production of documents where you're taking field measurements, or perhaps you're using as-built or as-constructed or record drawings to begin your process. Not saying that this is the case for everybody, but certainly I would take those with a grain of salt and go to try to verify what is reported there, because it seems that most often there are real inconsistencies in the document. Reviewing the documents for coordination issues before they are put out on the street for bid, if that's the kind of job you have as a design bid build, or perhaps it's a BIM driven project, and then you're doing this coordination of the FEMA phase. It involves the scheduling and sequencing of work, and involves meetings to resolve anything that have been foretold by any of the steps that we've talked about here. So this is a common language of assurance as you're going through the project and working with your team. And just sort of generically, the architect, engineer, designer of record is doing their assurance, perhaps mostly in the design phase. The general contractor in the planning and scheduling phase for submittals, for work, for materials, and also in the meeting of standards, being sure that mock-ups are practical, are available, are installed when and where they need to be, and that they are a part of the project if that is, often you're able to include the mock-up as a part of the final work. So the scheduling and construction of those mock-ups may become critical to the completion schedule. These are all parts of assurance. Anything to add to that, Doug, as far as quality assurance? Or Matthew, any questions?
Nothing to add, Jim. Any questions, Matthew? Jim, I don't have anything to add. Matthew, are there any questions?
Okay.
No, there's nothing at this point. You can keep going.
Okay. Let's then go to the next slide, which is quality control. Of course, this involves procedures to assure that the completed items meet a certain required quality. And this is the following page in the practice guide 137. And some of the parts of the quality control involve comparing items to an acceptable standard, which we have our specifications full of this language. Is the work within a range of tolerance, and whether or not those requirements are being met throughout our specifications, either by our observations in the field or by specific testing and inspecting that may be a part of the specification requirements. So often, testing agencies are used to measure these kinds of compliance, and they're involved at various stages of the work from beginning to end. Of course, the general contractor, the constructor, is responsible for the performance in accordance with the contract documents, and they've got to provide that level of quality of product. We perform quality control in the construction phase by our reviewing and observing work and rejecting if it's not in compliance. I want to come back to that just in a second, but also the authorities having jurisdiction may be involved in determining whether a law, an ordinance, or some other regulation has been met in the construction in a specific jurisdiction. So again, there are several parties that are involved in quality control. So let's jump back to the rejection if not in compliance, because I think this is probably one of the most important parts of quality control. I'll explain it like this. I'm a parent. Oftentimes I'm not a very good parent, but I try to be. And those moments where I have to be the parent and not the friend are the most difficult, because it's time for me to say, this is wrong, it's not okay, and it must be changed, it must be stopped. And I think that's one of the hardest things we do as professionals on any side of the team. But it is absolutely critical that we do it the moment we know it needs to be done. If work is not in compliance, the most important next step is to get that documented as quickly as you can and with as much detail as you can include, because the remainder of the project may well depend on how that rejection of non-conforming work is undertaken. And, you know, Doug and I have spent hours talking about this in various settings, so I'm going to hush and let Doug add to that as he wants to.
Jim, I agree with what you've said. One thing that I always tell my general contractors and the superintendents that are working the jobs is for them to not rely on me or my consultants for doing their quality control. That's not our role. Our role is not to perform quality control reviews and inspections for the contractor. That is in their scope of work. For the most part, they do it. The contractors do it and do a good job, but there are circumstances sometimes where they may get a subcontractor that they haven't worked with before that has issues where they're getting a time crunch or they're getting a money crunch, and being human, they'll sometimes want to see how much they can get away with. You know, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And it may not be good enough by our standards or the owner's standards. So we still, even though they're doing their job as quality control, we still need to do our job and not think that just because it's in their scope, we don't have to do it. And as Jim says, when you see an issue, raise it immediately. Raise it to the contractor and document it and inform the owner. My recommendation, don't just see it, take a picture of it, go back, write it up in your free report and send it out, and it's 3 or 4 days later that it gets circulated to everybody. I say, if you see something, if the superintendent's not walking with you on the site where you're pointing it out to him instantly, go find him before you leave the site and let him know so he can get it corrected. You don't want to put him in a position where he's proceeded on, covered up work, installed more of the same stuff in the improper manner, and then he's got to tear stuff out, and it puts him further behind the 8 ball when it comes to time and money. So as Jim says, it's important to document it, and document it quickly, and inform all parties as soon as possible.
And Doug, one of the items that you added on a previous slide that also, and I left it off here, is the owner's personnel involved in the quality control phase. It often shows respect and builds an understanding of concern between you and your client when you have their personnel, as Doug defined, their facilities individuals involved in this part. Just simply on your trip to the project and walking the job, looking for their confirmation that something is happening at an acceptable level. Polished concrete floors come to mind as something that maybe could be looked at in phases along with the owner's personnel. Here's where we started, and this is what it's going to look like partway, and this is what it's going to look like finished. We've done this one small area. Are you happy with that? So that they can begin to set their expectation match. But it also allows the owner the opportunity, if they would choose to do it, to be involved with the quality control at a time where they may be able to do something about it. So, Matthew, are there any questions there before we move forward?
Yeah, there was one question that came in, was how much of the contract documents should be given to third-party testing agencies?
Well, I'll tell you my answer to that quickly and then let Doug get me out of the woods here. Anyone that ever requests documents, I give them the entire set because that's the basis of the project. I, for example, frequently hear we only need the foundation drawings and the soils and the concrete section of your specifications. We don't want the rest of it. My professional belief is that that's a mistake because they don't have the full understanding of the scope of the project. And I think that they should have the entire set of documents. Doug?
I agree with you, Jim. I've long held a position that you get the whole set or you get nothing. I don't know. I don't think that was me. You get the whole set or you don't get anything. You need the whole set. If you are just getting the foundation package or foundation drawings and specs on concrete, you are not going to have a full understanding of the project and how it all fits together. So, Jim, I agree with you totally.
Oh. And is everybody still there?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we're here.
Sorry, my audio just dropped off. Sorry.
That's okay. That's I'm putting my that last noise was from where I am, and I tried to mute that out. So I'm gonna do that every time it's try to get us through the noise here. I'm sorry.
It is just a day of fun little glitches.
Yeah, it's where I am. For everyone to understand what that is, they're running a planer about 2 walls over, so doing a little construction work. Well, let's go to the next slide, Matthew, and it may be one you have to do a multiple click on. I apologize for that, but if there aren't words on it, I'll let you know. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, good. So, I put this in here because a friend of mine, an architect down in Southern Pines, brought this up to me one time after a seminar. And he said, the interesting thing, he came up and asked me where I bought my clothes. And I get my clothes at Walmart or TJ Maxx or Target or wherever I can find the best deal. And he said, you know, when you buy a pair of pants and you pay $15 for them, you stick your hand in the pocket, what's in the pocket? And it's this little inspector tab. Gosh, I'm sorry, y'all. The board doesn't look that long from here, but what's in the pocket is the inspector's name, inspector number 6. And his point was this, that you think about a company that's making a pair of slacks, and of course they make a lot of slacks, but you know they've got $18 worth of exposure to you for giving you the quality that you expected to receive in those pair of slacks. And he said, what do you think, you know, the aggregate exposure is for us on a $120 million hospital project? Because that's really what we should be thinking about when we're looking at our documents for issuance for construction. So it is so simple for us in the early phases of the work to find these things that can be easily corrected. And it's so critical to do prior to the time that we put them on the street. So you know, we have an opportunity through, if we are able to correct them before we issue for bid, it's very simple. If we don't, then we have the opportunity of addenda to correct those documents. And if we don't do it then, we've got the opportunity to get in front of the work while it's going on and get the correction made. So I just thought it was a very unique perspective in the way to look at what, by comparison, some organizations have a very detailed quality assurance and control process, and here we are in the business we're in, and often, as Doug and I like to get around about, our structural drawings meet our architectural drawings at the printer's shop. So that's a bad plan. Doug, is there anything you want to add to that?
Just to emphasize the importance of doing that quality review and assurance control during the design phase as well as the construction phase. It certainly makes life a lot easier during construction when the documents are in good shape and there are not as many issues that you have to deal with. Matthew, let's go to the next slide. And before we start, Jim, Matthew, are there any questions or hands raised?
I don't have any questions or hands raised at the moment, so I say we can keep going.
I'm really sorry about the background noise. I can't do anything about it, and if I mute the phone, I can't speak. So I'll continue to do the best I can. So there is also an opportunity for concurrent quality assurance and control. And by that, I mean that the quality control in one step may become the quality assurance for a next step, or vice versa. So in the manufacturing process, you know, there may be a checking of material that's required prior to construction, and that is an assurance process that is being reviewed against the contract requirements. Then once that product is assembled, there may be a testing process that's a part of the quality control. So if we look at something that uses natural resources like masonry, and there are some tests within the product to build the masonry, there are some tests within the products to mix together to create the mortar, and these may be assurances that then once are put into place, there may be a water pressure test required for the wall as an assembly that may be a part of the control process. And the reason to talk about this is just for us as practitioners to, I think, keep in mind that this quality assurance and control begins when we start work on a project and really isn't over until we have closed that job out. And there are these opportunities that travel back and forth through quality throughout the project. In the practice guide, it gives some examples of a project based on cast-in-place concrete walls that are an example of concurrent quality assurance and control. And I didn't try to put that detail here, but it's an interesting thought process to go back and look at it. And again, just to tickle us to remember that this goes back and forth throughout the project. Doug, anything else?
Let's keep going.
Okay. Matthew, if there aren't any questions, let's go to the next slide. So this is a document that we become all too familiar with. There, as the question came, whether they're free samples or not, there are all sorts of quality programs, either quality assurance or quality control, and you may even get involved in some of them that are at the manufacturer's level, that are international quality management programs. You know, it's whatever it is that we do as practitioners, whether we get one, whether we get some of them, we get them into place within our practices, and then we use them to manage our work. But particularly in firms that have had similar prototype projects. So, for example, you may do schools, you may do religious facilities, you may do condominiums or apartments. There's a prototype that is the basis of your practice. And please, whatever you do, learn from your past experiences and bring that information forward. There is no better quality management program than one based in your own experience in your own firm. And those are the easiest corrections to make. I'm sure it's never happened to any of you, but I've worked in firms where we did prototype schools and we did change orders that were the same change order for the same client on 3 of those schools because we didn't get it caught and we didn't get it corrected. That's bad marketing. And, you know, when you have an opportunity to check that, it's a real mistake not to be able to do it. Or you'll be buying a lot of these forms from the AIA. Or CSI, whoever's forms that you can use. So, Doug, anything else?
Just, again, emphasize the importance. Contractors have seminars. There's a book that's published that helps them to go through and find and look for triggers, keys for change orders. There's a book, I believe it's titled Contractor's Guide to Change Orders. If you haven't gotten that and taken a look at that, I would suggest you do. It's written from a contractor's perspective, but it tells the contractors things that they can look for, and when they're looking at a second set of documents that could lead them to a change order. And if you know what they're looking for, then you could know what you need to do to make sure that you're not doing the stuff that's going to trigger a change order when you put your documents together. it's the business that we're in. Change orders are going to happen, but we need to do our best to minimize them. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have a good quality set of documents. Matthew, let's move on.
Nope, we actually have a question here that follows right into what you were just talking about. We have a question here wondering is, how do you get a contractor from any of the trades to follow and or enforce the information that is included in their quality control plan?
It's in the contractor's quality control plan, I'm assuming. The question is, how do you get the contractor to follow their own quality control plan?
Correct.
Well, if they don't, I would say that you would have not that you necessarily want to have to take any legal action, but it certainly would be a strong piece of evidence in a court of law that they weren't doing what they were supposed to do if they're not following their own quality assurance programs. That's a powerful piece of evidence for them to try to sit in front of a jury and they say, well, here is the contractor's quality assurance program that says he's going to do A, B, C, and he didn't do any of it. That's tough to defend against. And one thing you might do is just remind him of that.
As Doug said a little earlier, that's sort of a tight rope there to walk because, as he said, we're not responsible, nor do we want to take on the responsibility of the contractor's required quality control. So going very deeply into the management of their plan, if you will, you might start to take on some liability that you don't want to. But, unfortunately, in the marketplace today, it seems like at the point when people really take you seriously is when you interrupt the flow of cash and you interrupt the flow of money, then everybody's attention is immediately focused on whatever is wrong. So it may be that there's an opportunity to create some milestones within the project schedule. Perhaps this is just an idea that the contractor needs to give some quality control report at various milestones that are tied to the processing of their pay application, like being on schedule. Doug and I both have worked for clients that require a manpower-loaded, cost-loaded schedule, and if you start missing either one of those components, then it starts interrupting the flow of cash. So it may be that it could be tied to something similar to that. Any other questions?
No other questions at this point, so I guess we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, go on to the next slide. So the point here is, again, just that there are quality control programs. Hit it one more time, Matthew. There are quality control programs that you need to find the one, the shoe that fits, and put those projects into place, put those programs into place within your project or within your firm. I'm going up a little in cost from $18 pants to $70 golf shoes. If those folks understand the importance of it, we should too. Let's go to the next slide. So this is something that Doug was talking about. You can hit it one more time, Matthew. One more time. You need to be sure that the whole team is involved. And often when you involve them in the very front end of assurance and quality assurance and control, then you get them as an important team player, and they are really bought into the project. This is something that happens in multiple phases, and I can't stress enough how important Doug's comment is about the facilities personnel. They know what they want. They know their expectations. They know what they need to see. So involve them in these sessions, so that they're there from start to finish.
I gotta go. Bye.
So, Matthew, are there any questions?
I'm not seeing anything at the moment.
Okay.
I'd like to add, you can go on to the next slide, but as you do that, I'd like to add in here, depending on the project that you're doing, the owner's expectations, the products that you're using, there are many different things that you can do to test for quality. And as Jim says, make sure you get the owner involved. There's different types of tests and different price points to go with those tests. And it really is an owner decision as to what he wants to spend his money on. Get him involved. If you've got an owner that's sensitive to buildings that have had leaks, you may want to have more extensive testing done on your roof and window, your building skin. He may be willing to pay for that. If you've got an owner that has not had those issues, he may see it as a waste of money. So as you're preparing the documents, make sure you get that information from the owner. What are they sensitive about? What is it that they want to make sure they don't have problems with? And then what can you put into those documents to help enforce that and check by doing some additional testing to see to it that those owner expectations are going to be met. I know a project that I worked on, it was on the coast in North Carolina on a college campus, and this particular owner had issues because of the high wind and rains with leaks on probably 90 to 100% of their buildings, and they said they did not want this building to leak. And so there was additional testing of assemblies once they were installed that we had in the documents that the owner knew about and agreed to pay for up front to make sure that he didn't have those issues on that building. And once that project was completed, I ran into that owner at a webinar, and not a webinar, a seminar, and he mentioned to the audience that they had very few buildings on their campus that don't leak, and that one was one of them. And it was because of those quality control, quality assurance measures that we put in place, because we knew that was a key issue for him. And he was willing to pay so that he wouldn't have to deal with those projects or problems. So again, it's the owner's money. Doing a whole building air leakage test is expensive and may not be warranted, but that's not our decision to make. That's the owner's decision to make. We can advise them and give them the recommendations as to whether we think it's advisable to do it on this particular project or not. But those discussions, the owner's got to be involved. You've got to have those discussions with the owner as you're putting those documents together.
Well, that's a great segue, Doug, into this slide, is that the success and the ability to manage quality, it depends on all the team members being committed to it and capable and involved throughout the process. And that, as Doug just said, that the owner is very realistic. So if they want a certain sort of facility, then there's got to be the budget there to do that. I've often observed that firms that I worked in, would do a mid-sized sedan level quality of work, which was very acceptable, and it got you there, but it wasn't the, European sports car version. And
I'm doing a webinar.
I'll
call you when I'm done.
That is important.
I'll call you when I'm done.
has the owner's budget goals and schedule being realistic. And then we, as the designer, have to be capable of performing at that level. In North Carolina, you can do any sort of project that someone will hire you for with your license. That doesn't necessarily mean you should go and try to do that kind of project. So that you're working within your capabilities to manage the quality of what that project may be. You're working in familiar territory, for example, and that you are capable of defining what the requirements are for that sort of project. Because there are those that are important to be involved with at the right time in your career. And then also you've got to have a general contractor that has the capabilities to perform, to supervise on this kind of a project and to provide conformance with the contract requirements at the level that they're trying to work. So as important for us as designers to work in the right market, so too is it for the contractor. Doug, anything to add about the team? Or Matthew, any questions?
I don't have anything to add.
All right. Well, we have two questions here. I guess one question and one comment. So question coming in here, ran into an issue. The owner's expectations and requirements were beyond the market norm, and the contractor, despite everything, fights those requirements. What would you suggest then?
The contractor is obligated to fulfill the requirements of the contract documents, whether it's what he did on the last job or not, or whether it's what he's done over his entire career or not. Saying, well, that's not industry standard, or that's not a code requirement, or that's not what I did on the last job is not a valid excuse or reason for not complying with the documents. He needs to comply with the documents, and if he doesn't comply with the documents, he's not in conformance, and you need to go through those contractual procedures to deal with it, whether it's withholding payment or sending out a notice of non-compliance of work, or getting bonding companies involved. There's all those things that we talked about in the past that you can do to get the contractor to do what he needs to do. But him trying to rely on industry standard when the contract is clear, the documents are clear that it's requiring more than that, is not an excuse.
And it may be that there were some opportunities missed that you learned from this, for the next project, in perhaps pre-qualification, of the contractor. I think I understand the question, and I've heard it too before. Well, this is beyond industry standards, and you can't expect me to do that. Well, yes, I can, because it's clearly spelled out here, and I think the key word Doug used is clearly. If in fact your owner expected something beyond industry standard, it's really important that was captured in as a part of this contract.
And to add on to that, if you know that that's going to be the case, if you know that you're asking them to do something that's above and beyond what would normally be expected, let them know up front. Mention it, emphasize it, don't just mention it. Emphasize it in the pre-bid conference so that all the bidders know, I need to include this in my price. Emphasize it in the pre-construction conference so that the contractor knows, oh, he really meant that, I still have to do that. If there's a pre-installation conference involved in whatever the assembly is or installation is, which I would assume it would be if you're going above and beyond industry standard, emphasize it there as well. Communication solves a whole host of issues. So just, if that's going to be the case, you know that the owner is looking for something more, make sure that it's communicated and well understood.
All right, there's a follow-up to that, but I know that we are also getting right on the hour here. I was wondering, is there then a way that you could put a dollar value Oh, actually, they said disregard that last entry, so we're going to just disregard that last question. There is a comment here, though, that does say that, or at least George here on the call says that what works for them is that for their projects done in BIM with Revit, once completed, they use the Navisworks clash detection program to find any problems in the drawings, and that's been a really good help to very good quality assurance on their end. So that was the other comment we wanted to add here. I have no other questions, so I guess if you want, I can go to the next slide here, Jim, and we can get wrapping up at the end of the presentation here.
Sure.
So just 1 second. I got to push a couple of buttons here, and that looks like we're at the end.
I would just like to point out that I've seen, it seems to me anyway, that a lot of the younger members of our profession, in my opinion, tend to rely on the technology too much. Navisworks is a great tool, but there are things that Navisworks does not always catch. There's no substitute for a good, experienced person going through documents and doing a good review of them. Relying on Revit and these spec writing packages and all, they're tools, they're not the answer. And you need to know how to use them, and you need to know how to put a building together first and foremost. And not just think, oh, it was done in Revit, it was run through Navisworks. Who's going to eliminate all our issues? In my experience, it doesn't work that way.
Well, I think that's a great close, Doug. And if you take a look at the screen here, it says Introduction to Construction Contract Administration. It's not necessarily a start over from the beginning, but a fresh look at what are some good ideas to undertake in the CA phase. So, Matthew, if we don't have any other questions or comments, I'll turn it back over to you and say thank you to everyone, and I hope you have a great holiday season and look forward to next year.
All right. Well, the only comment we had was after Doug's comment was a very, I guess, boisterous yes to Doug's comment, saying, I'll take paper calculations and human interaction any day. So with that, as you see on the last screen here, just thank you again for today's participation. Sorry about all the little weird technical glitches we've had throughout the call, but I hope you still got some helpful information. But with that, you do see Jim and Douglas's information at the bottom. If you do have any ideas you'd like to see us present in future months' topics, please feel free to contact them directly, or you can always reach me at mfochs, spelled M-F-O-C-H-S, at CSInet.org. It's the email address where most of your medium requests come from. Yes, Douglas?
Go to the next slide, because our email addresses aren't showing up on this one.
Oh, my apologies. Let's see about now. Hopefully that should be on the screen for you. So with that, again, everybody, thank you for joining today's call. So with that, if you would like to disconnect, you can do so, and we hope to see you next month for the new topic of Introduction to Contract Admin again. Thank you, everyone. You have a good day.